Hi, and welcome back to the fourth recording in the Living Authentically series. I've been missing for a couple of weeks after I said that I'd be doing this on a weekly basis, and that's because I've been listening to my own advice. When I started this series, it began as a way of just expressing where my life was moving in a direction to become more authentic for myself, to live more authentically and to be aligned with my own beliefs and let the outward appearance of my life reflect that both for myself as well as others. It goes beyond being honest, but that certainly is part of it. And in the first recording in this series, I talked about the importance of being honest with yourself and what I've learned about that. And then the second recording, I talked about checking in with your heart and letting your heart show you what it is you truly desire in life, and then tapping back into that, being honest with yourself about what that is. And then the last recording was about reaching out to others, and I shared about my personal struggle with that and how I was beginning to open to that possibility more and more for myself. And I believe in that video I shared, as I've shared with students of mine in workshops, that the minute you commit yourself to a plan of action or to a study, register or sign up for a workshop with a particular focus, that energy that goes into your intention starts the process for you. So even before you get to the first day of class or to that first morning of a workshop, that intention that you put out for that type of knowledge or healing or shift or experience is already happening in your life. And so that actually explains why I've been absent the last few weeks after saying that I would be here each week. Because when I first sat down and decided that I would offer this series, I wanted to see if I felt like I had enough to keep the recordings going just for 12 months, one a month. And then I became aware very quickly that once a month really wasn't going to be enough to keep people's attention. And it was really kind of letting myself slack off. So I continued to look to see what topics I felt like addressed my way of being authentic in the way I live, and what were the themes that are associated with living authentically for myself and for everyone else. And as I started listing topics, sometimes the information around those would just flow and I'd have a lot of information to write already. And other times it was just the title, like, be honest with yourself or reaching out to others. Well, a few weeks ago, the topic was planned to be showing compassion for yourself. And as I explained about registering for a workshop or making a commitment to a new practice in your life, the minute you make that decision and you connect to that energy, it starts happening. So what happened for me was the minute I realized that the next topic was to be showing compassion for yourself, I found myself in situations where I indeed, in fact, needed to be able to show compassion for myself. And part of that was not pushing myself beyond what was basically absolutely necessary every day. And even though generally when I make a commitment for my business or to other people to offer something, I see that as necessary because I've made a commitment and a promise. But in everyday life, sometimes commitments that we've made can't be kept and we have to make new commitments. So my new commitment moving forward is that I'm going to be here every week as it's possible for me to do that, because I learned in a big way the last few weeks that sometimes things are happening in life that cause us to need to bring the strongest sense of compassion that we have to ourselves and to our own lives. And it doesn't have to be a crisis, because I wasn't in crisis. There was nothing going on in my life that you would consider a crisis, but it was big projects that were all coming to an end at the same time. And one of the things that I've learned over the last few weeks is that there's a type of fatigue that happens to us when we're pushing hard to see something be completed, or when we're holding space for something to happen. Especially, say, if you have a friend who is going through some kind of trauma or challenge, and you're holding space for that person, and you've invested a lot of energy in that for that person. And then when the challenge is past, when the project is complete, when the threat is over and past, it's like our bodies have become accustomed to pushing so much cortisol and so much adrenaline to stay in that space for that person or for that situation, that the body says, okay, it's done now, I can relax. And because it's been pushing beyond the norm, it has to relax in a bigger way, just like it was pushing in a bigger way. Something like muscle fatigue that we experience when we go to the gym and we work out, and we push the muscle to that point so that it will break down and then regenerate. And that's why we can't work the same areas every day. So that's basically what happened to me over the last few weeks, was that a few weeks ago, after my last recording, some big things that I was holding space for came to completion. And at the end of about the third project that came to completion, that had been serious things, right, in my environment that were complete, because I had been pushing beyond for so long and holding space for so many things, my body just kind of collapsed and my mind said, I can't do anymore. And so that's where I was. And I had two choices. I could try to serve from a completely empty container or vessel, or I could sit back and show myself the same compassion that I would tell a client or a student or a friend that they needed to have for themselves. And so during the time that I was looking at this topic, I actually went online and looked up a definition, and the Merriam-Webster site defines compassion as sympathetic consciousness of others' distress together with a desire to alleviate it. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, I take that to mean that we become conscious of the distress that someone is experiencing. We have sympathy for it. And then along with that consciousness of the distress and the sympathy that we have, we also have a desire to alleviate that distress for them, whether it's realistic that we can do that or not. So a hurricane on the coast, or an earthquake on the other side of the world, and I have compassion for the people that are going through that, both the people experiencing it and the people that are trying to help them. I become conscious of a distress. I have sympathy, and I have a desire to help alleviate that, even if there's nothing I can do. Now, maybe I can send money in a case like that. So if I think about then what having compassion for myself means, it means becoming conscious that there's distress in my life for whatever reason, whether that's physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. Becoming conscious that there's pressure, there's something that's not right, right? And then having sympathy for myself, understanding that as a human being, I deserve the same amount of sympathy that I would offer anyone else. And then along with that, a desire to alleviate the troubles, the distress, the pressure that I'm under. And when you can offer some kind of assistance when you're experiencing compassion, then you do. And so that's what I've done the past few weeks. I've looked at my situation on a daily basis and I've said, where is it I can alleviate the distress that I'm feeling right now? Do I need more sleep? Do I need to take a look at my diet? And I did need to take a look at my diet, because most of us are not perfect at keeping our diet where it needs to be for our highest and best, for the healthiest version of our body when we're experiencing a lot of pressure, when there's a lot of things going on and we don't find ourselves taking the time to take care of those types of needs. So I looked at sleep, I looked at diet, I became conscious that I was distressing my body with some of the long-term impacts that were happening. You know, you think, okay, I'm just going to grab this to eat today. And you don't realize that today has become 3 or 4 days, that today is in the line of several days. Oh, I'm going to stay up late to finish this or to address this, or I'm going to work harder and then just jump in the shower and jump back out and not really take the time to give myself that gift of a relaxed shower. And you look back over a period of days, weeks, months, and you realize that just today has become almost like a new habit. And so you turn compassion on yourself and you say, wow, look at this distress that I'm experiencing. I really have a desire to help alleviate this if I can. And then you get real. Back to week 1 of these recordings, you start being really honest with yourself about what it is you need. And you let it be okay that you need that. And here's something that's extremely interesting, not really a surprise to me, but it's interesting because it's affirmation of what I've been taught and what I've been teaching. I don't believe that we can receive anything for ourselves that we cannot give ourselves. So let me explain that better. I don't believe we can receive more love or attract more love to ourselves than we have for ourselves. I don't believe that we can attract or receive more respect from other people than the amount of respect we hold for ourselves. So what has happened to me over these last few weeks is things like being at a fair where I was working, something I did have to do, and having people at the fair, fellow staff members, fellow vendors, fellow readers, healers, come to me and say, I just felt like I needed to come over and give you a hug. Passing people and them saying, earlier I felt like I needed to come over and check on you and see if you were okay. Others coming to my table multiple times a day and not saying anything like that, but I could just feel that they were wondering why they kept feeling that they needed to come to my table. Friends of mine who are energetically sensitive popping in on Facebook or through a text or an email and saying, you keep coming to mind and I feel like I need to check in with you. And that happens to me certainly all the time, but not with the volume that's been happening to me recently. And just today, as I was thinking again about what I would say during this topic's recording on having compassion for yourself, I realized that what I was experiencing was exactly what I said a few minutes ago. I had started turning that frequency of compassion on myself to a greater level than I ever had before. And so it has brought me this abundance of compassion from other people. In the past, that would have been uncomfortable for me. As I shared in last week's recording, reaching out to others has not always been easy for me. And that has continued to open up for me as well. I've had people doing extra things for me, and it's been easier. I've been more willing to ask people to do things for me that are perfectly acceptable things to ask for help with. But in the past, I would have been afraid to do that. Or if not afraid, I would have been hesitant. I would have felt like, oh, I don't need to ask someone to help me with that. They have all this other stuff that they have to do. You know, why would they do that when it was something that I would be more than happy to do for someone else? So kind of seeing if I can kind of bring this all back together. We make a decision in our mind that we're going to learn something or put ourselves forward for an experience. We're going to study something, or we're going to commit ourselves to some kind of new practice. And the minute that that decision is made, the minute there's a thought energy connection to that idea, it starts to move in our lives. When we begin to have more love, more respect, more compassion for ourselves, we receive more and we attract more from others. And so that's what I've been experiencing in these last couple of weeks. And I would like to say to you that if having compassion for yourself feels uncomfortable, if as I'm talking about this, you're getting a weird sensation in the area above your navel, or if you're getting a weird sensation up here in your throat chakra, then I'd like to challenge you to consider where you might be more compassionate with yourself. You know, we can't complain about what life is bringing us if we're not willing to allow it for ourselves. If we're not willing to show compassion for ourselves when we need it the most, and we may be the only person around who knows at that moment that that's what we need, then we can't complain when life shows up in a way that seems compassionless. When life shows up in a way that seems like we're alone, that there's no one to help us, when it seems like no one seems to know what's going on in our lives, it may be because we're out of alignment with ourselves. We're not showing ourselves the compassion, the honesty, and the care that we're looking out into the world to bring us. So the best thing we can do for ourselves and for the world is to show compassion for ourselves. One of the best things we can do. Because when we show compassion for ourselves, we can relax. As I've allowed myself to not push beyond what I truly wasn't capable of doing in the last few weeks, I've been able to relax into this safety net that has now allowed me to come forward again with who I truly and authentically am. It's made me feel secure to be who I am. It's let me know that it's okay to be me. And part of being me is sometimes needing to rest more, sometimes needing to put off a commitment and make a new commitment. And I hope that this has helped you today. And if it has, I'd love to hear from you. I'm Sherry Kaufman. As I've said before, I'm a Reiki master, teacher, a DNA Theta Healing practitioner instructor, as well as an Aroma Freedom practitioner instructor. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can reach me through my email at coffmansherry@gmail.com or through my website, empoweredjoy.com. And I'll put that in the description of the video. So I hope to see you back next week. That's my plan. And I look forward to talking to you then. Thanks for joining me today for this video. Bye now.